Good morning. Today is Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. We mentioned this earlier, the narrative at the beginning of this week's Torah portion, when Yitro comes to visit his son-in-law Moshe, and he sees how Moshe operates. He sees what Moshe is doing. Vayeshev Moshe lishpodes ha'am. Moshe is sitting and he's adjudicating disputes between people, and he's answering questions. Vayamodam al Moshe min haboker ad ha'arev. People are waiting in line to be able to speak to Moshe from morning till evening. And Yitro sees this, and he says to his son-in-law Moshe, Lo tov hadavar asher ata oseh. It's not good the way that you're doing this. You're going to wear yourself out, and the people are going to get worn out. Rather, here's what you should do. V'ata techazeh mikol ha'am anshe chayil yirei elokim anshe emes oni betza. You should appoint worthy people to be judges, to adjudicate cases. And they should be people who are courageous, people who fear God, people who are truthful, and without any kind of desire to take a bribe or to be partial towards one side or the other. And you'll appoint these people, and they will adjudicate these disputes. And I'll make it easier for you, because only the major issues that they cannot decide themselves, they'll have to bring to you. And also, this will achieve that the people will attain the goal of peace. Vayishma Moshe l'kol chosno. Moshe listened to the advice of his father-in-law. Vayas kol asher omar. And Moshe did everything that Yitro had suggested. Now, there's an insight from the Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. He lived in the mid-1800s, a great scholar in Europe. And his insight is brilliant. It's unexpected. It's actually counterintuitive. But it starts with the following question on this passage. We can all understand how Yisro's advice to Moshe helped Moshe, because Moshe was overwhelmed. He was the only person answering these questions, and he was getting worn out from morning till night. He's sitting, listening to people and answering their questions, and clearly he was becoming exhausted and he needed help. Okay, so that part of the plan makes perfect sense. But what does Yitro mean in the last line, where he says, Gam kol ha'am al makomo yavo b'shalom? And this plan of delegating and appointing these other lower judges, this will also achieve the goal of peace for the people. The people were not exhausted. Moshe was exhausted. It's clear what Moshe gains by this system of delegating and having other judges, but what is the advantage to the people? How does that lead them to having a higher level of peace within their society? So I want to start by explaining the answer that the Netziv gives with the following introduction. In Jewish law, even today, in any civil case, a dispute between two parties, there are two ways that the court, that the Bet Din, Jewish court, can address the dispute. There are two processes that they could use. One process is called din. That's the strict application of the law. And the other is called pshara, which means compromise or mediation. And so at the beginning of each case, the Bet Din will ask the litigants, would you like this case to proceed with din? where we're going to find the strict law according to who's right and who's wrong? Or should we proceed with pshara to try to mediate and find a compromise? In fact, in most places today, it is required. Bet Din will only deal with pshara, but let's leave that to the side. Those are two options. Now, the classic treatment of this subject is a famous essay based on a major address from the Rav, Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik. The title of the work is the Torah Way of Justice. And the Rav writes as follows. Din pits one party against the other. The Dayan, the judge, analyzes the relevant facts of the case and applies the appropriate legal sanctions as prescribed by Talmudic law. The law is administered with cold impartiality, and its decisions are dictated by objective data. One party emerges the victor, their case is vindicated, the plea of the other is denied. The legal issue has been resolved, but human bitterness continues to fester. Because, yes, one person won, but the other person lost, and they're going to be upset. That's what happens if you follow din, the strict application of the law to the case. In pshara, however, says the Rav, social harmony is the primary concern of the dayan, of the judge. The fine points of the law and the determination of precise facts are of secondary importance. The goal is not to be juridically astute, but to be socially healing. Now that's a revolutionary statement for a judicial system, that the primary goal is to be socially healing. So that's the Rav's explanation of the difference between din and pshara. Now, let's go back to the Netziv. The Netziv quotes the Talmud. The Talmud asks the following question. You have two choices. You have a case between two individuals, and you have two choices as to how the bet din, how the court can proceed. There's din, strict justice, strict law, or pshara, mediation, compromise. The Talmud says, which is preferable? And the Talmud presents a dispute about this. Rabbi Eliezer says, it is not right to engage in mediation or compromise. Din is the way to proceed. And he uses the phrase, Yikov hadin es hahar. Literally that means, let the law pierce the mountain. Meaning, the law is the law. It's right, it's wrong, that's the way we should proceed. And he goes further to say, this was the motto of Moshe. Our rabbis tell us the motto of Moshe, the lawgiver, Moshe Rabbeinu, the teacher, Yikov hadin es hahar. The law comes first. The law should pierce the mountain. We decide disputes based on din. Rabbi Yehuda ben Karcha disagrees and says it's preferable to engage in pshara, to mediate, to find a compromise. And the Gemara says, the Talmud says, this was the philosophy of Aharon, Moshe's brother, about whom our rabbi said, Ohev Shalom, Verodev Shalom. He loved peace and he pursued peace. Aharon was the type of person who wanted to find a compromise, who wanted to mediate, who wanted to try to soften the blow to either of the litigants. And so this dispute in the Talmud between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehuda over whether to prefer din or pshara is reflected in the difference in character between Moshe and Aharon. Moshe represents and preferred din, whereas Aharon preferred and was more attuned to pshara, compromise. Now, the normative law is in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda, and I mentioned to you earlier that even today, in most cases, a bet din that is going to hear a case will actually insist that it be done with pshara, with some type of mediation or compromise. However, there's one proviso. There's one requirement. A bet din can only pursue pshara as long as the judges do not yet know who is right and who is wrong. Meaning, it's got to be at the outset, this is how we're going to proceed. But if a judge in his own mind has already reached a clear verdict, it's already clear to the judge who's right and who's wrong, then it would be inappropriate to say, let's proceed with a compromise, because it would be a suppression of justice when he already knows what the legal outcome should be. Now, listen to how the Netziv applies this. It's really ingenious. The Talman says that Moshe preferred strict justice over compromise. Moshe was not a person, when he adjudicated, that approached a case with pshara, because Moshe's intellect, his knowledge, and his sense of justice was so strong that immediately upon appearing before him and hearing just the first words of the case, Moshe would immediately in his mind know exactly who was right and who was wrong. And therefore, not only is it that Moshe was attuned to adjudicate a case based on strict justice on the law, but it would have been impossible for Moshe to mediate, because there was almost never a moment where Moshe was not clear on who was right and who was wrong. So therefore, Moshe's method of delivering justice was din, applying the law. When Yitro suggested to Moshe that he delegate authority and appoint other judges, now Moshe is going to bring in ordinary people. Yes, they have to be courageous, they have to be honest, they have to be impartial, yes. But they don't have to have the exceptional power of prophecy that Moshe had, or the exceptional legal mind that Moshe had. And therefore, precisely because they did not have Moshe's immediate ability to know who is right and who is wrong, they were able to engage in pshara. And more often, they would be able to find a solution where both sides felt that they were heard, and both sides felt that they were not adjudicated against. I mean, they didn't lose. It was a compromise. I didn't get everything that I wanted, but at least I got part. I wasn't wrong. Partially. And because both sides benefit somewhat, both will believe the result is fair. In the words of the Rav, in its highest sense, justice obtains when people are reconciled. So in other words, by Moshe delegating most of the cases to these lower judges, they could do something that Moshe could not do. Because they did not immediately sense who was right and who was wrong, they could engage in pshara. And by engaging in pshara, they helped lead to harmony, to peace, to reconciling the parties. Something that Moshe was not able to do because he immediately saw who was right and who was wrong, and he had to adjudicate that way. It's an incredible insight that there was something that Moshe could not do because of his brilliance, because of his closeness to God, something he could not do that others of a lower spiritual level, lower intellectual level, that they could achieve. Because since they did not know the law as well as Moshe did, they could arrive at a compromise that both parties could see as fair. The characteristics and strengths that a mediator needs to find a compromise are different than the characteristics and strengths that a judge needs in order to decide who's right and who's wrong. And what comes out at the end of this is a fantastic lesson, and that is that ultimately every single one of us, whether we're greater or lesser, higher or lower, whatever abilities we do have or do not have, every single one of us has a role to play, has something to offer that no one else can offer. No one else higher than me, no one else lower than me. There's something unique that every single one of us can do that no one else can do. Famous line in Pirkei Avos, Al tibaz l'chol adam. Do not disdain any person. She'ein lecha adam she'ein lo shah, because there is no person who does not have his or her hour. There is a certain moment, a certain circumstance, a certain context where that's the person that can help and no one else can help. And that is true about every single person. You just have to find what that context is. But that's true about every single person. Something that ordinary individuals could achieve that even Moshe, in all his glory, could not achieve. And that's why, of course, a nation is greater than just any individual, because every single individual has something to offer. Here's how T.S. Eliot put it. In order to arrive at what you are not, you must go through the way in which you are not. And what you do not know is the only thing you know. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.